Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to do a tune-up on an old Porsche engine, hopefully one that you guys have. First of all, a brief introduction here on why one should want to do a tune-up in the first place. There are two main reasons, actually three. One is, of course, to save money, despite the very high charges that other places charge to give you tune-ups that may not do them exactly right. Two is to make sure you can do them exactly right and avoid shall we say, less than perfect workmanship on the part of the usual apprentice who is delegated to do the tune-up on the older 356 and 912s as opposed to the real pro who is now being used for 928s, 944s, and the like. The third reason is a tune-up can actually catch problems before they occur, such as too tight exhaust valves that can lead to an exhaust valve burning, too far advanced timing that can lead to a hole in number 3 piston, and other difficulties of that nature. So bear with us now, and we'll hope you will save money when you learn how to do the tune-up, and being able to do it right, make your engine run a lot longer than it ordinarily will. So bear with us now as we proceed to describe the tune-up procedure. First of all, as you can probably see here, this is your typical run-of-the-mill 356 912 Porsche engine with a few minor embellishments. like the gold plate on the generator shroud and the gold plate on the generator strap, the gold plate on the oil filter can strap, and the gold plate on the coil strap, as well as the nuts on the generator pulley and crankshaft pulley, having also been gold plated. The powder paint on the oil filter can also matches the powder paint on the engine stand itself. The generator stand's been polished, the generator's been polished, the outside and inside of the intake manifolds have both been polished, and we have nice colored spark plug wires here. We also have, as a demonstration purpose here, a Weber 40 IDF on this side and a 40 Dellorto on this side, which later on we will describe and show the differences between these carburetors, their advantages, disadvantages, problems, and solutions on how to hook them up. But for now, we'll do a tune-up. One more thing I might add is the muffler looks a little bright because it's arc sprayed aluminum as opposed to the normal primer paint that burns off in 5 minutes when you first fire it up. Okay, tune-up. The tools required to do a tune-up are very cheap, easily obtainable. You need two 10mm wrenches, a 13mm wrench for the valve adjustment, or a 14 if you have a 356A pre-1960. Set of feeler gauges that go at least from 4/1000 of an inch to 8/1000 of an inch. Ideally 16 to 18 for the points also. A medium-sized screwdriver, a universal metric wrench, or a 30mm socket if you can get to the pulley nut easily. And ideally a voltmeter, ohm meter, VOM, which works out very nicely for checking the timing. You don't have to have the VOM. You can do the timing check by eyeballing the points when they open and see the spark that occurs with the key on. However, a voltmeter makes life a lot easier. You don't have to have a battery hooked up to the engine. The sum total of these parts are probably no more than $20, except for the voltmeter, which costs about $32 at Radio Shack or equivalent. So for less than the price that you would pay for a tune-up at any shop, you can have all the tools necessary to do a tune-up and won't have to pay anybody else to do a tune-up ever. The other thing you need, of course, is a good spark plug wrench, one that has either a magnetic socket or a rubber insert in the socket so it grips the spark plug effectively. These wrenches you can buy in sets quite cheaply, about $7, $8 for the set of sockets with the spark plug wrench and the socket set. Okay, the first thing to consider in a tune-up is first to adjust the valves. Now, you should remember that the valves should be adjusted cold and the oil change, etc., when hot. So, on the day of the tune-up, the best thing to do first is to adjust the valves. Now, to adjust the valves, you have to know which cylinder is number 1, 2, 3, and 4, etc. So we will describe that now. On a Porsche, in a Porsche 356 or 912, everything is relative to the front of the car and the driver is sitting in the driver's seat. So the front of the engine is the flywheel, or the front of the heater boxes. The rear of the engine is like the muffler. Knowing that, the number 1 cylinder is the right front, this one here. Number 2 is the right rear. Number 3 is the left front. And number 4 is the left rear. Now, to find number 1 cylinder, it is also very simple to trace the spark plug wire from number 1 over, under, around, and through. And we find it goes over to here. This is number 1 cylinder on the distributor. So if we pop the distributor cap off, either with one's fingers or a screwdriver like that, so to the side, we'll find the rotor pointing in this direction. There's also a notch in the body of the distributor that shows that indeed number 1 on the rotor is number 1 on the distributor body. Likewise, there's a notch on the pulley. And this notch on the pulley, just conveniently in this particular situation, happens to be lined up with the timing notch in the case. And this is top dead center on number 1 cylinder. Now, if your rotor doesn't point in this direction, or if it doesn't line up with the notch in the body of the distributor, when this is at top dead center on number 1, then the drive gear inside the case has been installed improperly. It might behoove you to install it right when you do a overhaul or any certain work on the engine. In this particular situation, by design, we have number 1 cylinder at top dead center, all set to go. Now, to adjust the valves, one takes a screwdriver, pries off the bail on the valve cover, takes off the valve cover, sets it aside where it won't get stepped on. And what we have here are the intake and exhaust valves. Now, exhaust valves on a 356 or 912 are always the outermost valve, the frontmost or the rearmost, and the intake valves are the 2 in the middle that line up very nicely with the intake manifold, as you can see here. So again, number 1 cylinder is the right front, and the exhaust valve is the furthest one towards the front at the angle, and the intake valve is here. We will now adjust the intake and exhaust valves of number 1 cylinder. And to do that, one needs a 13 millimeter wrench for everything post 1960 and a 14 millimeter wrench for everything pre 1960 for the 356A models, a medium bladed screwdriver in good shape, and a set of feeler gauges varying at least from 4/1000ths of an inch up to about 8/1000ths of an inch. And we just happen to have those right here. Now, with top dead center on number 1 determined, we start off with the 4/1000ths feeler gauge. That fits through both of them. We then check with the 5. That fits through both of them. We go up to 6. It's getting to be tight there, almost exactly 6/1000ths clearance. We try it here, and the 6 fits through. We try 7. We can't get 7 into the exhaust valve. It's gapped 6/1000ths of an inch, which is what it should be. You should set the exhaust to 6/1000ths of an inch in almost all cases, and the intakes to 4 to 6/1000ths themselves. We try a 7 on the intake, and it goes through fairly tightly, and an 8 won't go through. So the exhaust valve is gapped correctly in this situation. The intake is a little bit loose, which you can sort of hear. So to adjust the gap, one takes a 13 millimeter wrench, puts it on the lock nut, loosens the lock nut, puts the screwdriver in, takes what one wants for the valve adjustment. In this particular situation, well, since it's a new engine, we'll adjust the intake valve gap also to 6/1000ths of an inch. We put it in, put the feeler gauge in between the valve and the rocker, and turn the adjustment screw until we can get a light drag fit of the feeler gauge between the valve stem head and the rocker. And that's just about there. And then we tighten the lock nut, trying not to move the slot adjustment, and give it another check, and we find, lo and behold, it's right on the money. The feel one gets when one pulls the feeler gauge through the gap should be a light drag. It shouldn't be really loose, like a 5 would be with no drag at all. 6 has a little bit of drag to it, and that's the right gap. And a 7, you have to force in. This shows you the gap attained at 6/1000ths of an inch was just about right. Now, the normal firing order of a Porsche engine is 1-4-3-2, meaning number 1 cylinder fires, followed by number 4, followed by number 3, followed by number 2. So if we were to adjust the valves in firing order, we would now have to go to number 4 cylinder to adjust the valves. However, there's a neat little trick you can use that allows you to adjust the valves on this side first and then go to that side and complete that side. And that is if you do it in reverse firing order. Since firing order is 1-4-3-2, you put this down on a paper you can see, the reverse firing order is 1-2-3-4. And reverse firing order is merely obtained by cranking the pulley counterclockwise in reverse firing order rather than clockwise in firing order. So now, if we take either a 30 millimeter socket wrench, which can be used on this engine since there's no rear plate on, or if you have a engine in the car, which is the typical case, the universal metric wrench. And you put it on the pulley nut here and adjust it and crank it counterclockwise 180 degrees. until that OT mark that was at the top is now at the bottom. And that is top dead center on number 2 cylinder. We come over here and we check the valve gap, and yes, indeed, it has some valve gap. Get our feeler gauges out. We check the valve gap now on number 2 cylinder. We first start with a 5 thousandths. It goes through both of them. We go up to a 6. A little bit tight there, but not quite right. A little loose there. We try a 7. Won't go through there. Tight fit there. So the gap on number 2 cylinder is just about right at about 6 thousandths of an inch. Now with a new engine, it is highly recommended one set the valve gap at, say, 6 to 7 thousandths of an inch to fire it up on. On a used engine, in general, the valve gap is best set at 6 on the exhaust valve, 6 thousandths of an inch on the exhaust valves, and 4 thousandths of an inch on the intakes. You then go over to the other side after replacing the valve cover gasket. And incidentally, the valve cover gasket is good for about 5 or 6 removals as long as you're careful. You can get away with keeping the same gasket on there for about 5 or 6 removal and replacement cycles. When it does begin to leak, though, it's time to replace the valve cover gasket. You set it on carefully, pull the bail up, give it a love tap down, and it should seal nicely. Now, one next goes over to adjust number 3 cylinder and number 4, and one does that by cranking the pulley once again counterclockwise 180 degrees until, good compression, until the OT mark again comes up and lines up with the notch in the case. The reason for this, well, at this point when this happens, we now have number 3 cylinder on at top dead center in the firing position. This could be determined by putting the cap back on and tracing the wires. We pop off the valve cover on the number 3 side. Sometimes they stick, but usually they come right off. And we proceed with the valve adjustment on number 3. Now I won't bore you with this since the same procedure applies on both sides. Instead, I'll give it a quick check just to show you that it'll work again. In this situation we have a loose 8 on the exhaust and a tight 7 on the intake. For fire-up purposes, just to run it and then go back through the valve adjustment immediately after shutdown, once it cools down after shutdown, because the valves must be adjusted cold. We will show you this upon fire-up. Today, Porsche fans, we're going to take a look at 2 different types of carburetors. We have, first of all, the good old favorite 40 IDF Weber. It's been around for a long time, over 7 years. Reliable, not too temperamental. Good replacements for worn-out Solexes or Zeniths. We have the newcomer on the block, the 40 DRLA Dellorto. It's only been out for about a year or so. We'll take a look today at the advantages, well, the similarities and differences, the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 carburetors, and problems and their solutions of the various types of kits that are available for them. Okay, first of all, going to the Weber 40 IDF, you should note that they come in 2 flavors. One is the 40 IDF, the other is the 44 IDF. The 44 is now an endangered species in the Porsche world, as very few people have them in stock. They're also somewhat on the big side, used mainly for racing, etc., pretty much all-out racing, are a little hard to use on the street. This is the 40 IDF, however. It has a much smaller venturi, 28mm diameter rather than 36mm of the 44 Weber. And the 40 IDF Weber is very tractable on the street, can be used for almost any purpose. It replaces worn-out Solexes and Zeniths very nicely. Let's show you some of the characteristics of these things. We're beginning here with the Weber. Then we'll go into the Weber and Dellorto kits as they come with their air cleaners, manifold adapters, and linkage, showing you some of the good points and some of the bad points too. Okay, to start off with the Weber here, move around to the front. One thing one should note is the fuel line on a Weber kit The carburetors come with mirror image fuel lines. This is so you can either arrange the fuel line so it points towards the front of the engine or towards the rear. When the fuel line points towards the front, you can hook it up using your original fuel line, cutting off the banjo fittings and using rubber hose to attach to your original fuel line, and thereby make the setup very much stock looking. In fact, many smog inspectors have not been able to tell the difference between Webers and, say, Solexes when hooked up that way. If you want to, on a symmetrical Weber, you can put the fuel line towards the rear and just use rubber hose and save your original fuel line for later usage sometime in the distant future. Okay, the Webers 40 IDS come with a removable top, which has a pseudo-velocity stack. It's not really a velocity stack, just an extension, but it serves a bit of a purpose of a velocity stack. It fits on top of the carburetor base. Carburetor base would go on here, and then this would fit inside the carburetor base like so. You can also note that this is the latest model 40 IDF Weber. It has the extensions on the jet stack, making it very convenient to remove the air correction jet, the emulsion tube, or the main jet, which we'll do a little bit later. Other advantages of the Weber, or characteristics, is the current batch of the new Weber kits have an infinitely adjustable accelerator pump, adjusted by tightening or loosening this nut to vary the amount of gasoline injected during the accelerator pump's stroke. This is very much in keeping with the design of the Solex 40 PII carburetor. It uses basically the same arrangement of how to adjust the amount of gas shot in during the accelerator pump squirt. Very nice to have around the house. Over here on the Weber, we have three little dealy bobs. The first one here is an air bypass line. It bypasses air from before the throttle plate to after it. This is used to adjust cylinders that have, say, low compression compared to the others. It's not normally used, and you should not remove or loosen this lock nut. It comes from the factory set with the screw all the way in, blocking off the port, so there is no bypass across the throttle plate. You should leave it that way, except in dire cases. This is the idle mixture screw. On a Weber, it's like a micrometer. You can screw it in, and the engine will respond, unlike a Zenith or a Solex, where you can screw sometimes for days and not have any effect. This particular plug here is a plug to plug the vacuum line. They have a vacuum attachment on the Weber that goes into the high vacuum side below the throttle plate, so you can use it for a vacuum advance or retard distributor. It's currently plugged by a little brass plug, as you see here. The accelerator pump diaphragm is inside here, activated, of course, by the adjustable rod, so you can vary the amount of gas squirted in during the accelerator pump cycle. Up here, on the top of the carburetor, actually on either side of the fuel inlet line, are the idle jets of a Weber. This makes life relatively easy to remove them. You can get a screwdriver in them fairly effectively, even when they're on the car. And you'll find you may have to do this occasionally, since this jet is the smallest one in the carburetor. It tends to plug the quickest and easiest, and you'll find that a clogged idle jet will cause poor idle, poor transition running, and even affect things up to about 50 miles an hour under low load. Webers also have a return spring on the end of the shaft of the carburetor, but it is too weak, really, to close the throttles and close all 12 ball socket connections when they get rusty on an old Porsche 356 or 912, so I highly recommend you use the throttle return springs that are existing on your Zenith or Solex carburetor and attach them to both of the carburetors here, both Webers, to provide for cutting the throttle, returning the throttle back to idle. We'll now take a closer look at the jets here and compare them with the Dellortos once we get the Dellorto compared. This is the newcomer on the block, the Dellorto 40 DRLA carburetor. There are three versions of this. There's a 36 millimeter, which refers incidentally to the bore of the throttle butterfly or to the bore of the carburetor here. There's a 40 millimeter Dellorto, which is what this is, and there's a 45 millimeter Dellorto, which is somewhat too big for use on most anything except 427 Cobras and the like. Note that the Dellortos come with very nice velocity stacks. They very nicely done, they fit very nicely, and they seem to work well. They're a little better than the Weber velocity stacks or the Weber extension of the carburetor. Dellortos also have the extensions of the jet stacks like the Webers do, making it very convenient to change jets. The fuel inlet on a Dellorto is a little different than a Weber. One Dellorto has one fuel inlet, and the other one, this one in particular, has two. And the reason for this is you can use the Dellorto then with rubber fuel line without using any of your original fuel line. You can have one gas line come into one of these inlets and then take another gas line out to the other carburetor without having to use your original fuel line or cut it or anything. Of course, if you did want to use your original fuel line to keep everything looking stock, then naturally one would have to plug one outlet here or attempt to get a Dellorto that didn't have this two outlet or one inlet, one outlet fuel line attachments. Just a few other minor details about the Dellorto. It has the same type of arrangement on the base as a Weber does. It has a vacuum takeoff, which is very much like a brake bleeder valve in that though it looks open with an open hole, when it's screwed in all the way, it's actually shut, like a brake bleeder is. To provide the vacuum takeoff, all one has to do is loosen the nut a little bit, and you'll get vacuum takeoff here for a vacuum advance or retard distributor. Dellortos have also a bypass around the throttle plate, which is in this recessed screw hole here. That's normally not used for any purpose, so leave it alone. And this is, of course, the idle mixture screw of the Dellorto. These here, this particular brass plug is nothing more than the brass plug used to plug the hole that the manufacturer used to drill the transition ports inside the carburetor. Also, Dellortos have a adjustable accelerator pump, just like the Webers and the Solexes do, so that's another plus in their favor. And the return springs of a Dellorto are quite a bit stronger than those of a Weber. A little better, but still not really strong enough to use when you have 12 rusting old ball socket connections on an old Porsche. So it's highly recommended, even with Dellortos, you use the throttle return springs that come with the Zenith or Solexes to help close the throttle shafts. Okay, one other interesting feature about Dellortos, we'll take the velocity stacks off here so they don't fall off. There's a cutout here in the base of the Dellortos that I'm told provides a whistling sound when the carburetor is running on an engine. There is one batch of gaskets that now has a protuberance that fits into this hole to block off the noise formed by the vortex shedding and the high-speed whistle, or the high-pitched whistle. Whether this does make a whistle or not, we'll find out when we fire them up, but I've been told it does. So in case it does, don't panic. It's probably just this plug here, this little cutout, and that can be dealt with eventually. One other thing I should note that it's hard to see in there, but I can tell you about it. When the throttles are set up by the factory, both of the Weber and the Dellortos, the throttle butterfly is set up such that it just barely uncovers the first port in the transition port of the side of the carburetor. This might provide for better idling than just putting it randomly. They both seem to have a reason for setting them up that way. So I suggest strongly that you set up the carburetor linkage when the carburetor is off the engine, not when it's on the engine. When it's on the engine, of course, you can't see what's going on down here. When it's off the engine, you can. Okay, we'll now compare the Dellortos and the Webers together, side by side here, see what differences they have internally, and then show you the differences in the kits used for both Dellortos and Webers. First off, let's look at the main jet stack. It's easily removed either with a screwdriver or a dime if you're lucky. This is the Dellorto main jet stack. It has a air correction jet here, an emulsion tube here, and a main jet there, and it'll pull apart usually with your fingers. If not that, then with a pair of pliers, like so. The jets merely push together. Very simple to change them. Put new ones in, clean them, etc. Weber jet stack is very similar to the Dellorto, but they are different. Arrangement's the same. There is the air correction jet here. Actually, on the Weber it's here. The emulsion tube here, and the main jet there. And anything can be replaced with a pair of pliers, etc. Now, one thing you should note is, of course, that the Dellorto jet stack and the Weber jet stack are made by different manufacturers, and absolutely nothing will interchange between them. You have to use Dellorto jets, main jets, and emulsion tubes and air correction jets with Dellorto carburetors and Weber main jets, emulsion tubes, and jet stack or extension with Webers. As an attempt here, we can show you how nothing will interchange. Attempt to put the Dellorto top on the Weber, and there's no way in Hades one can get that on. If you attempt to do the reverse, you'll find that there's no way in Hades one can get that on either. They can only go with their own type, own kind here. You'll note, however, the jet changing is a completely trivial operation. Just don't over-tighten things. It will prevent disaster if you don't over-tighten things. You see in a few seconds one can change the main jet, the emulsion tube, or the air correction jet. Try doing that on a Solex or a Zenith in less than about 2 hours. Now, a few other things we should point out here. Let's go to the idle mixture screw of the Weber. Take it out. And we'll go to the idle mixture screw of the Dellorto. Take it out. And what's interesting with the idle mixture screws is the Dellorto idle mixture screw has much finer threads than the Weber does. They're similar. In fact, they're almost identical. But they're different. And the threads of the Dellorto are quite a bit finer than the threads of the Weber. This is theoretically supposed to give you better idle adjustment of the Dellorto over the Weber. How much of a role that plays in real life, we'll see when we fire the engine up that has one Dellorto and one Weber on, and we'll see how easy they are to adjust. Again, please note, the replacement of these things is quite simple to do, straightforward. And to get semblance of idle, we'll screw the jet in all the way, the idle mixture screw in all the way. And we'll back it out about 1.5 turns, and that should make for a reasonable idle adjustment. We'll, of course, do it more exactly when we put it on the car, or put the engine in the car and fire it up. Likewise, on the Weber, we'll screw it all the way in and back it out about 1.5 turns. Now, we should check out and look at the idle jet itself in the Weber, which is located on either side of the fuel inlet line. And here you just take it out with a screwdriver. In a car, you'd have to have a short, stubby screwdriver, but that's readily available. The Weber idle jet is very small. It is in fact the smallest jet in the entire carburetor. This particular one is a 50 idle jet. That means that the diameter of the hole, the little hole inside the jet, which can be barely seen, is 0.50 millimeters, or approximately 20,000ths of an inch. A 55 idle jet would be 0.55 millimeters. A 110 or 120 main would be 1.1, 1.2 millimeters. To replace the idle jet in the Weber, you merely put it back into its holder, like yay. You place the O-ring that you should make sure you take out. Stick it back into the carburetor, and with a screwdriver tighten it down. Now, of course, in the car you can't use a long screwdriver, you have to use a short stubby one, but the principle is the same. And it's fairly easy to remove the jet. You'll find that Weber idle jets sometimes clog, and this is an easy way to fix them. Take them out, blow them out, and put them back in again. Now you might think on the Dellorto that this is the idle jet on the Dellorto, but it isn't. This is the accelerator pump jet, which has a little cord cut out of it here, like a Zenith accelerator pump jet, to align the accelerator pump nozzle properly. Unlike a Zenith, however, this is fairly easy to replace. You merely stick it in such that the cord is up, and with a little bit of luck it goes in the first time. The Zeniths are sometimes a real bear to replace. The idle jet on the Dellorto is right next to the main jet stack, and it's reached by using a small screwdriver to get in there. After you get it loose, however, in the car, you'll have to use a grabber to get it out. Here, we can merely turn it upside down, the entire carburetor, but in a car, you'll have to grab it with a pair of tweezers or pliers or something. Again, the jet, the idle jet, is replaceable. On this particular model, Dellorto, it's a 55 millimeter idle jet. You had a problem with it clogging, you could merely take it out, clean it, and put it back in again. Okay, tighten it down reasonably well, but not overdoing it. And now we'll take a look at the accessories, i.e. the air cleaners and the adapter plates and all that Webers and Dellortos come with, like so. At one time in the past, the Weber carburetor came with this incredibly Mickey Mouse air cleaner. Really terrible looking, held on by clips rather than screws. It's pretty worthless. If you get these, best thing to do is send them back or throw them away, which is what we'll do now. The gooder, or the better air cleaners that the Dellorto has are cast aluminum type, like yay. Come with 3 pieces, a K&N type oiled filter element, cast aluminum base, cast aluminum top. They're not the most impressively designed, nor are they the nicest looking ones, but they do seem to function. They have one major problem, however, and that is when you put the air cleaner base on the Dellorto, you'll find that the fuel inlet bulge prevents the base from sitting flat. In fact, it's raised up about 1/4 inch or so here. Now, this is a disaster if you try and tighten it down. You might break the base or crack it or something like that, cause a massive fuel leak. So the best thing to do is one of twofold. Either get additional gaskets and fit over here so that you can raise the base up high enough to where it clears this fuel inlet, or using Solex manifold insulator blocks between the carburetor and the intake manifold, you can machine out the stud area of that block and put it on such that it raises the air cleaner base up high enough to prevent interference with the fuel inlet line. Now, one other thing about these particular air cleaners is they're rather difficult to fit together. As you can see here, it requires some doing. Push this in very tightly and it tends to wander out and stuff like that. Finally get it in. Getting the top on is not quite as difficult to do. When you do finally get it together, you then have to line up these 2 threaded rods here to tighten it down. That's lots of fun too. But when they go on the Dellorto, they don't look too bad. However, they're not as good as the K&N air filter used on the Webers. And we'll show you that here. This is the large K&N air filter. It comes in 2 flavors. It comes in a smaller K&N filter that has 1 screw holding it together. The large one can be distinguished by the fact it's got 2 just barely 10mm across the flat nuts, acorn nuts, holding the air cleaner together. Again, these are designed for a Weber, and they fit on a Weber very nicely, like so, and look very nice, have no interference with fuel inlet or anything like that. They can, of course, also, since the Dellortos are designed to be identical to Webers as far as the bolt pattern, etc. goes, you can use a K&N filter on the Dellorto, except for the aforementioned problem with the fuel inlet line bulge. Again, you'll have to use the spacers on the Dellorto to space out the air cleaner enough to where it will rest flat and not interfere with the bulge in the fuel inlet line. Unfortunately, the K&N filters are not supplied with Dellorto kits. With the Dellorto kit, you'll get this type of air cleaner, and you'll get a kit like so that contains manifold adapters and linkage arms for your Dellorto. Now, unfortunately, the manifold adapters that do come with the Dellorto kits have a slight problem. They use round top countersunk screws to attach the manifold adapter plate to the manifold. And the problem is, if you put the round top screw in, it can protrude, and does protrude slightly above the top of the base of the carburetor adapter plate. And when it does that, it can interfere with the carburetor, raising the carburetor up slightly and making for an air leak, even with a gasket there. So the solution to this problem is merely to enlarge the countersunk area, or try and find flat top countersunk screws that don't have the protuberance above the base of the adapter plate. It would have been nice if these guys who make these kits had put them on once or twice to see what the problems are and solve the problems. They're very simple problems to solve with either the right hardware or the right machining, but they haven't been done. The other problem with this particular type of adapter kit is that the bolts used, get out the bolt here, it's used to hold the carburetor to the adapter plate. And what they are is they do use bolts rather than studs. You have to feed the bolt through the Dellorto, through the gaskets that's in the base, and screw it carefully into the base itself. Now, trying to align 4 bolts with the holes in the gasket and the holes in the manifold base is, of course, lots of fun. Again, it would be much easier if one had studs to do the job with, and one can, of course, replace these bolts with studs, but they're not provided in the kit. The linkage arms that also come with the Dellorto kit are the earlier style, older style Weber linkage arms, and though they will fit on the carburetor all right, they're not overly strong. In fact, they're relatively weak and they can bend pretty easily. They work, but they're not the finest in the world. Net effect of this is that the accessories for the Dellorto are, though not terribly bad, not quite as good as the current available accessories for the Weber kit, such as the adapter plate set used for the Weber kit. These adapter plates are thicker than those of the Dellorto kits, which were actually, incidentally, earlier style Weber kits. And these adapter plates come with studs. And the studs are such that you can put them on very easily, screw them in the adapter plate like so, and the carburetor rests over the studs, making life a lot easier as far as alignment. Put the gaskets over, it's quite trivial to attach. There is, however, one problem with the Weber adapter plates this very day. Actually, there's 2 problems. We'll go to the first one first here. The adapter plates are held to the Solex intake manifold by 6mm Allen head bolts, and they fit down inside a recessed area here. The difficulty is that this recessed area is open. It's a hole there, and when one uses the gaskets to attach, on top of the stud, you see that the holes here cut out for the studs are a little bit too big. And if they're not arranged right on the air cleaner base, they can uncover the hole for the 6mm Allen head bolt. So the solution is relatively simple. You take some red GE RTV silicone sealer, fill up the hole in the Allen head and the hole itself in the base, and then put the gasket on to squeeze out some of this RTV silicone sealer. And then when you tighten the carburetor down, you won't have an air leak there. It is also a good idea to take some silver paint, spray it on a Q-tip, and paint the red RTV silver so it looks like everything else around it, rather than standing out like a sore thumb and telling the world that you use GE red silicone sealer on your carburetors. The trick here then, at least the trick I think, is a good one to use, is to, if you want to try out the Dellortos, get just the carburetors and buy the manifold adapters and the good K&N air filters from a Weber setup, and you'll have yourself a nice combination. There you have it, fans. You have here the Weber setup, there the Dellorto setup. Gentlemen, choose your carburetors. Okay, now we're going to adjust the carburetors. We do this by popping the linkage arm off of both the left and the right-hand carburetor like so. And with the engine running, we screw each idle mixture screw in all the way until the engine dies in that cylinder. Then we back it out again until it runs okay, and we keep doing this, iterating on that same screw until we get where the engine runs the best on that screw. And then go to the next screw. Screw the mixture screw in and back it out again. And now, after we've done that, we take our wonderful little air mass meter and stick it in both the left-hand and right-hand carburetor. In fact, we check all 4 holes to make sure all 4 are sucking the same. This little wonderful device I'll explain a little later. If the one side is running way too high or too low compared to the other, you adjust the idle stop screw on each carburetor to either raise up the idle or lower it. Once having done that, you bring out your air mass meter again, a very wonderful device to have. In fact, it's much better than the Unison here. This Unison has many problems, like it won't fit on top of the carburetor easily, interferes with the stud holding the air cleaner top on. Likewise also, sometimes a little ball gets stuck inside the tube there, the venturi meter, and you can't read it to save your life. The new one, the air mass meter, is available for about $25 or $30 or so. It's a wonderful little device, just like the air mass meter on your fuel injection system. You can read it directly. There's no problem. It's very reliable. It doesn't influence the airflow like the Unison does. Very nice thing to have. After adjusting the idle mixture screw and the idle stop screws to get both carburetors running evenly, you see that when you do the rev up, you have the proof of the pudding. As a brief interlude between sections of the tape here, we're going to show you some of the more interesting problems that have come down the pike. This particular one is a number 3 main bearing off of an A or B crankshaft, and you'll note that there's a dowel pin sticking out of an oil hole here. This was caused by not, as you might suspect, having dropped the dowel pin down in an oil hole, but rather the dowel pin was placed properly in this dowel pin hole, but the bearing was installed wrong. The bearing was installed such that an oil hole was placed on the dowel pin hole rather than the proper dowel pin hole of the bearing. Now what this meant was the dowel pin could eventually work its way loose and come out through the bearing up against the crankshaft. And it did exactly that. In fact, what happened was probably when the guy shut the engine off, the dowel pin went into the oil hole of the crankshaft slightly, and then, if you note, there's another piece of the dowel pin in the other oil hole. How to get there, you might ask? Well, the crankshaft sheared off that part of the dowel pin that was protruding into the oil hole of the crankshaft, carried it around 1/2 revolution inside the crankshaft, and deposited it in the other oil hole here at first opportunity. Fortunately, both the dowel pin, the main part of it, and the piece of the dowel pin got wedged inside the oil hole, did not come out to cause gross difficulties. However, the clunk it must have made when it decapitated and sheared off part of the dowel pin must have been quite interesting and caused the owner to take the engine apart. He was then quite surprised at his, quote, expert, unquote, neighbor's overhaul of his engine, and when finding the dowel pin in this particular location. He was actually lucky, because had the dowel pin not wedged somewhere, it could have done this, where it sticks inside the crankshaft, actually goes inside the crankshaft, and then acts like a plow on the inside of the main bearing, plowing a furrow that's about 1/8 of an inch deep all the way around the bearing, sending pieces of this plowing operation throughout the entire engine, and making a mess of everything, requiring yet another overhaul, and he just had one before. This case was so bad it even deformed the outer surface of the bearing rather severely, making mincemeat out of the case. In fact, what had happened was with the dowel pin that holds the bearing in place inside the crankshaft, not holding the bearing in place, this bearing spun inside the case and made the case much too large. It had to be a line board. In fact, it had to be a line board the second oversize. It was so bad. This is another example of how, when you do an engine overhaul, please make sure to set the dowel pin of the number 3 bearing, first of all, in the dowel pin hole of the case, not the oil hole of the case, and secondly, put the number 3 bearing's dowel pin hole onto the dowel pin, not onto an oil hole. And then you won't have either this gross problem or this one. You might think that the fan of a Porsche is relatively trouble-free. And yes, it is relatively, but every now and then they can come apart. And when they do, usually little broken tabs here fail. Fan blade comes off, either one or several, goes through the cooler, stabbing the cooler and causing a mortal injury to the cooler. Sometimes they unravel completely and ruin the fan housing too. This you shouldn't worry about too much. It only happens very rarely, but I thought you'd like to see an example of one that has done so. Just quickly here. Here's yet another example of the gasoline water hammer effect, whereby the carburetor leaks, fills up the cylinder, you try and start the engine, it won't start. In fact, it seizes the top dead center, so you coast it down the hill, say, and pop the clutch. This is what happened in this case. The rod became foreshortened by about an inch or so, obviously bent and even, in fact, broken here, all because of a gasoline hammer effect from a leaking needle valve in the Zenith carburetor. So if you do come out to your car when it's parked on a hill facing uphill, and it goes click and doesn't start, I suggest you not coast down the hill, but in fact either turn the engine over backwards to relieve the gas or pull the plugs out, then crank it over. But this has cracked the piston, cracked the cylinder, and ruined the connecting rod. One more thing here. I said before the big bore kits were given a bad rep because they had sometimes failed, but likewise stock sets, including 912s and even stock supers, fail too. So it is not the big bore kits or the piston's fault, it's the rotten gasoline we have these days. And these defects will crop up if you have too high compression ratio on your engine. Okay, today we're going to show you a certain type of new problem that's cropped up in the new batch of big bore kits. First of all, though, a little bit of history on big bore kits. Back about 5-10 years ago, there were two basic types of big bore kits available, one of which was an 1800cc kit that required you cut both the case and the heads to make it fit in. Unfortunately, when you do this, you couldn't return to stock cylinders and pistons at all, and these kits kind of fell from favor and grace, and now, fortunately, are no longer available. The other type of kit that is currently available and was in the past is a 1720 kit. They're 86mm pistons and cylinders, usually Japanese, that are currently available under the trademark of NPR for Nippon Piston Rig and others. Some come in white boxes, some come in checkerboard boxes. But the best kit I've found from experience is the NPR kit that comes in this type of box here. You see it's a nice blue box, has NOA for Nippon of America. It has inside the 4 cylinders and pistons with rings installed, wrist pins, and retainers. But they have one problem that's been added. It seems that in late 1983, 1984, there is an incredible shortage of big bore kits throughout the country. It has been learned, or it has been stated, that the cause of this shortage was the guy who ordered the kits for next year, i.e. 1984, ordered 400 kits when in fact he needed 4,000. This slight order of magnitude difference in the amount ordered versus the amount required caused one heck of a shortage of big bore kits. In fact, it eventually led to the sucking dry of all the stock sets off the shelves of all the importers and anybody else that had them, because if you had an engine tied up for want of a big bore kit or any cylinder and piston kit, you would get one that, no matter what it was, and put it in. Anyhow, the big bore kits have finally come back into the U.S. on various boat shipments here, but they've also brought with them one problem they didn't have before, and we'll show that to you. If you're fortunate to get a new big bore kit and it has yellow markings on the cylinder and the piston, you should be cognizant of one potential problem that may crop up. And we'll demonstrate that for you right now. You take your engine case, you will find that if you put a stock cylinder on the engine case over the studs like it should be, it will go on with little or no difficulty. That's the way it should be, and that's the way it had been for big bores in the past. However, you now take your big bore kit that comes, if it has the yellow dot on it, and attempt to put it over the stud, you'll find that it'll go so far and won't go no more. Now you might think that you could take a hammer and tap on this to get it over, and you might be able to do that, but you also might ding up the sealing surface of the cylinder here, and that'll cause a gross combustion leak and ruin your head too, or require it to be fly cut, likewise ruin the top of the cylinder. So please don't hit these things with a hammer when they don't go on. Now we're going to show you a simple little test, or if you do have this type of kit, how to tell what's wrong and then how to fix it. All you need for a test is an old intake or exhaust valve from a 356C or 912. Works as a very nice micrometer, and I'll show you what you do with it. You merely take the valve and you drop it down through a stud hole. It goes down through the stud hole, everything is fine and hunky-dory. And you'll note that it will go down through a couple of these stud holes. However, when you try another one, it won't go down. In fact, if you note, it sticks at a quite strange angle, about 10-15 degrees from the vertical. And it won't fit through. Likewise, the stud won't fit through it either. This is the reason why it won't go over the studs, and this is the new problem the new big bore kits have. In fact, if you have the cord facing towards you, this is the cutout for where 2 cylinders fit together on the engine, the problem hole is always the one in the upper left-hand corner. The one in the lower right-hand corner is a little bit tight and should be cleaned up, but the one in the upper left-hand corner is pretty gross. It won't fit, the stud won't fit through, it'll hang up on it, and you'll ruin your cylinder trying to drive it over. And what else you might find is interesting, in occasional kits that you'll get, all of them are like that, where the upper left-hand corner stud was machined wrong. That's because when they drilled the holes, they probably used a gang drill, and one gang drill is set up at an angle, like so. So it drilled all the same holes wrong. You'll find some problem with this particular stud here. This is the lower right-hand corner one. These are bad, but not quite as bad as the upper left-hand corner one. These other two are okay, and they are okay on all of them. So you see it was a setup and machining problem these things had. When they set up and made the new batch, they drilled them all the same way and all wrong. Solution, however, very straightforward. You take a 7/16 inch drill, and either you chuck the cylinder up someplace where it won't move around, or you hold it between your toes or something, and you drill out all 4 holes, if you want to be sure, to 7/16, just a tad over the size of the hole the way it is now. And after you drill it, I guarantee you that all these cylinders will fit over their studs very, very nicely. I should mention, the big bore kits work very nicely when you keep the compression reasonable. But they've had some difficulty in the past, whereby if the compression is raised too high, you will proceed to put a hole in the piston. However, nowadays are available some 1mm cylinder base gaskets that fit between the base of the cylinder and the case, right here, and they will generally lower the compression about half a compression ratio point down from about 9.5, say on the 912s, to about 8.7, and be much more compatible with the grade of poor gasoline currently being used today. I highly recommend these 1mm thick cylinder base gaskets. In fact, if you're putting a big bore kit on a normal or a super engine, that is to say an A or a B, you'd better use them plus an additional 1 or 2 thin shims. Otherwise, your compression may still be too high, since the A and B heads had much smaller volume in the head than did the CN912s, COC912s. So the thick 1mm thick cylinder base gaskets are available either through the Maestro or through Stoddard imported cars in Willoughby, Ohio. And I think even PB Tweaks has them now. But if you want to get a set, they cost about $4 a piece, and you can get them, of course, through the Maestro. Now, when you're putting these things, the big bore kits, on, you should always do a solder check either through the spark plug hole or by taping solder or clay to the top of the piston. Assemble the engine, crank the engine over at least 1 complete revolution, ideally 2 or 3, and then take the head off and measure how much solder or clay has been depressed. You want to have at least 1mm clearance between any part of the top of the piston and any part of the head or the valve. If you don't have a millimeter clearance, you can end up with the piston touching the head or the valve and rather deleterious effects. Again, the big bore kits are very nice. They work very well. They're certainly a lot cheaper than the factory setup. They're basically a copy of the 85.5mm Pullman Schmidt industrial big bore kit with a dome-on piston to raise the compression up to something reasonable. I like them. I use them a lot. As long as you do it right, they're fine. This current problem, however, was rather annoying, especially when you are trying to get an engine built. However, the solution is rather trivial. Please note, though, that when you do drill the hole out, you'll have pieces of cast iron all over the place. So please wash the cylinder inside and out with soap and water, then wash it off again with WD-40 or equivalent. Get out all the crap, oil, grease, etc. Likewise, clean off the piston while you're there, and put it together lubricated as described in the book Secret of the Inner Circle, and I think you'll have a nice running engine. Just want to show you this. This is one of the current ongoing problems that every now and then crops up where problems weren't before, and thought you'd like to get a head start on the solution. Thank you for your attention. This now concludes tape 1 of the Maestro video. Hope we've answered a few of your questions. Hope we haven't caused many more to develop in your head. And anyhow, happy trails to you till we meet again. This begins part 2 of the Maestro's videotape, and before we start it, we must have our commercial. Here is the ABCs of Porsche Engines, the first book and the most famous. 700 pages of facts and figures and pictures like you wouldn't believe. Details the history and evolution of all the engine parts. This one is Murphy is my co-pilot, the problem-solving text. 400 plus pages long of Porsche problems and their solutions. Some solutions found here are found nowhere else. It's the only one around of its type. It's a mere $19.95 on special if you already bought the videotape through HCP Research. It has a picture of the Porsche police car, which is, of course, the Maestro's very own. It's a cabriolet. For cruising down the Autobahn at highly legal speeds when you happen to be the Autobahn cop and there are no speed limits on the Autobahn anyhow. Murphy is my co-pilot is available through HCP Research, as is the ABCs of Porsche Engines, and the best one, Secrets of the Inner Circle. How to assemble and disassemble and assemble your engine, your 356 or 912 Porsche engine, yourself, the right way, the first time, and have it run well, extremely well. All the tricks and tips here. It's 356 pages long, plus new additions for 1984-85. You'll find the tips and tricks in this book you cannot find for love nor money elsewhere. It's a step-by-step procedure taking you through by the hand through everything. We now continue our program with the Speedster Plus, one man's concept of what a 1985 Speedster ought to be. Here it is, and we continue.
No, I built the suspension, took it out of the car, put it on the bench, surrounded it with white paper to cove it, and then photographed it in orthographic projection from the three sides.
Right.
And I blew it.
Blew it?
The lighting wasn't right.
Oh, really?
I didn't know till I got the photos back. The suspension was in the car. You think I want to take it back out?
You have a 5-speed 911 transmission in this, right?
Yeah.
And it still uses the torsion bar assemblies?
Yes.
Okay, but use the trailing links and everything for the 911?
No. The trailing links are modified, in effect, Z'd. Now, I'll show you something.
All right.
Oh, yeah. The blank, the 356 blank, has this cast section down here. It stops the lower run of the torsion bars, or the lower run of the spring plates. So instead of sawing that off, and I can't tell you exactly why, I ended up Z'ing the plates. I ran them back and dropped them to pick up the banana bar at the rear end.
Okay. Why don't you describe the interior with the location of the radio and all that good stuff?
Describe it. That you can get on film.
That's what I want to do.
I don't know whether you can... let me clean it out there. You don't know.
Well, you can take out the old prophylactics and things. There's the radio in there.
Radio.
There's the ashtray on the door. You'll find this is not an option in any factory parts book that you'll ever see. A nice little armrest and little cubby hole there. Okay.
Yeah, where in the world would you start? How about the dashboard?
Can you take the top off? Down? That's what you're doing. Okay, fans. This is one hell of a car, one man's personal statement of what a speedster should really be like. There's the other speaker hole over there in the passenger side.
No sense.
Note the raised sill section, which is for added safety and strength to the entire car chassis assembly, all properly carpeted in original carpeting material. The dash has a few more instruments that you'll find in the average speedster, as you can see from the number of instruments in it. The cutouts there, of course, for the oil cooler.
Why don't you shoot from the rear end where it's actually
visible? There it is. Okay. Now there's the oil cooler deep down inside there, hiding underneath the grills. Where are the grills from?
My shop.
Oh, you made them up specially?
Yeah.
I thought they might be from a GTO or something.
This happens to be the surround that's used on kitchen cabinets to fasten the formica to the top of cabinets.
Okay.
These are the 3/32 welding rods. These are the welds.
I see. Okay. Very good. You made a few other modifications to the engine, like removing the coil down to a somewhat lower position.
We talked about the breathing system, trying to maintain low pressure inside the crankcase instead of up in the rocker box.
Right, that's the two inlet-outlet lines to the breather there on the right-hand side. It allows for better venting of things. He vents everything from right in front of the distributor, where the normal oil return line goes, like so. Note the aluminum welded. That's aluminum, not titanium,
Yeah,
right?
there's definitely aluminum, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't learned to weld titanium yet.
Okay. Titanium would be a little more impressive, but that's okay.
If I knew how to weld it, that would be impressive to me, too.
Why don't you lower the fuse box area there and show people where the fuse box really should be on a Speedster when you do it yourself. There it is, fans, with all the Teflon-coated wires, all numbered.
What about the spares?
The spare parts, which include the following.
Fuses. Do I have all the bulbs? I don't know if I've got all the bulbs, Harry.
We got enough of the bulbs, right?
I'm missing headlights.
There's even a light there, so when you open the compartment, of course, you have a light to see what you're doing.
Unfortunately, the schematic isn't as proper as it should be. I didn't have it printed.
You have a schematic there in the fuse box, too, right?
Excuse me, that's a fuse list. The schematic actually lives in the service manual.
Okay, I see. Very, very nice. Very well done. The entire car is wired with a Teflon-coated wire, huh?
That, and also, I didn't dare crimp one. They're all soldered. It's a personal preference, though.
I agree. Much better to solder than crimp. All right, let's see what else you have here.
The trunk.
Yes, the trunk. This is the
lighting is horrible up here, though.
That's all right. I mean, we have adjustable conditions here on the camera. My favorite is the little pipe plate there, which is actually made out of a block of aluminum that's been machined, where the 98% of all the aluminum ended up as chips on the floor. Very impressive. It therefore prevents any type of gasoline leakage onto your fuel tank by taking it down the drain. Or your clothes, right. Note the rather unconventional spare tire here, which is one of the inflatable spare tires. That's a new first for Porsche. What else did you do to this thing? Oh, the T over there where you get to connect the vent line with the drain line.
How about the reservoir for the brakes?
Yeah, nice modification, a C-type reservoir so that you can check the brake filler without having to take out the access.
There's another trouble light, which in this case is on a flush mount because I want to be able to get it out to change tires.
Oh, you also enlarge your compartment here so you can put basically a full-size suitcase there.
That's a result of the front panel here. Get that out of the way. Which lifts up. That's the battery access down in there, and of course the oil and the spares and whatever else.
Okay. What's the switch? Oh, that's the light on the stalk so you can see what you're doing. Right, okay. A little extension light so you can take it around the parts of the car in case you want to see what the hell is going on.
You want to change tires?
Or change tires, right. Now, what else have you done to this thing?
God, where do I start? Front suspension, 2.5 degrees added caster. That's not going to show in your film, though. After 3/4 negative camber.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to be able to get under the rear to pick up the suspension mods there.
We can try.
Floorboards.
Oh, the little vents on the vent windows. I like that. Why don't you show how they operate? They're very nice.
Yes.
That's so that in case you're driving down the road with your side curtains up, which of course these are, you can open a little pod there, and voila, you have indeed venting of the entire car.
Well, the thing is here, though, that the entire structure of the mounting and the side curtains had to be changed in order to accept this.
Mm-hmm.
From that, I was left with the possibility of various vents, sliding, whatever, and this seemed to be the most neat.
Very impressive. Continue with what you're going to do there. With the,
you don't want to see that. It's got newspapers all over the floor. The seat mount, I don't know, what would you show there?
I can show that. All right, the seat is adjustable back and forth, side to side, as well as axially relative to the car's axis.
The reason for that is that being tall, my shoulder runs into the top frame. If the seat is outboard, when someone short drives it, with the seat moved in, they can't get to low gear, which is over and down with a 5-speed.
Oh, it's a 5-speed, right.
Yes,
Yes, 5-speed guys in a Speedster. Try that sometime. You have also, I see, a C-type heater system control there, huh?
Oh, it's 912.
912, okay.
This, let's see, luggage back, or storage back here. Oh, that's
yes, did away with the seats and had storage in the back now. Yes, indeed, that's very nice.
I think that shows a little bit better.
Pull that up so we can see that. There you go. Is that lockable?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
That's, in fact, that's a lock out of a C-type glove box.
I see. Keeping with tradition. What's with the little covers there? Is that for the roll bar that you
can
put in?
This is roll bar mounts. Velcro down there.
Velcro down there is a roll bar mount.
The back
Okay.
mounts accomplish the same thing. You're not going to be able to see them. Back in this area, also Velcro down.
That's the other mount for the roll bar. Huh?
You got 2 mounts at the front end and then 2 bars going back, triangulated that direction in that plane.
Okay.
Of course, disc brakes, but that's so common it's hardly worth talking about.
Yeah, that's true. But
5.5-inch rims. That's only uncommon because you can't get them chrome anymore. Of course, it's 12 volt.
There you can see naturally, of course, 12 volt. Here you can see a better shot of the venting system, how it attaches to the specially designed breather can. What else have you done to this
Can you
thing?
actually see that? In that?
Yeah, I got it on Zoom here, and I can see it all very nicely.
What else have I done to it?
Keep going.
How about the emblems?
Ah, yes, Porsche 1600 Plus. And it certainly is plus. By God, it's exponentially plus. Very impressive. That also follows
Stock
through
exhaust.
on the dash with the Speedster Plus. This is a special option. It only takes 10 years or so to build yourself. What else? Oh, you got a little light there down below the dash.
You know, the one thing
trouble light.
a judge at the Hillsborough Concours picked up on, I haven't seen anyone else do it, is the wire loom that takes the leads from the car body into the door.
Oh, right. Yes, right. I just noticed that when you open the door. Right there. Yes. There's a wire loom that goes from the body to the car door for the radio. It's too bad you didn't have electric lifts on the windows. Electric lifts on the plastic.
Side curtains. A little arm that comes out of the storage compartment. Picks it up.
Little robot arm.
Nuts. Why didn't I think of that? Probably would have only
It's going to take another year to do that, right? All right.
The point of the thing, to give you some idea of the aim, I was allowed by my own rules, of course. I was allowed to do anything to increase the performance, the comfort of the car. I was not allowed to change the body shape.
Right.
The difficulty in fitting that suspension to the car is the result of the fact that those wheels have to travel with the new suspension within the existing fenders. Being that they're spherical, and in fact being that the entire bottom of the car is a series of spheres, the measuring process was long and slow in order to drop plumb lines down to an arbitrary plane, build the suspension on that plane, and plumb it back up into the car to find out whether...
Get in front of the car. Keep going.
To find out whether the tires were going to clear all the various body parts and also the new suspension members back underneath. Suspension was also complicated by the fact that the heater linkage and ductwork passes exactly through the new path of the banana bars. The ductwork was easy enough, although I yielded some space from what used to be the seat area behind the driver and passenger seat. The linkage got more difficult. I finally settled on aircraft instrument control U-joints in order to move it over to an area which was not occupied by the banana bar in some part of its travel. The heater only added 3 or 4 months to the rear suspension project.
You kept the original license plate, though. I'm surprised you didn't have a plus sign.
You know, when I got stopped about 3 weeks ago, he wrote me up for 68. He was very, very kind. I never saw less than 85. He looked at the car and he says, "Why don't you get personalized plates?" And I said, "Personalized plates don't come in black and gold."
That's very good, though. I see why you want to keep the original license plate on it. He's done one hell of a job on modifying the Speedster to be really a 20th century Speedster. You got the amenities that they should have put in. You've got certain modification to make it stronger, safer, run better, cooler, longer.
To give you an idea about the stiffness, I did it on the passenger door.
Open the door here so we can see a good shot of the stiffener there.
Well, you might, actually it's from the side here. There's gusseting, horizontal gusseting back here to load it into the main area of the torsion bar tube. Vertical gusseting up here to feed the loads into this box built by this tube under here, plus the floorboards and these verticals, airport verticals. It was tested by fastening a bar to the front fender, run across the door through a couple of guides onto a piece of graph paper back here with a pencil and several drives around a favorite block. And I got something approaching 3/16 of an inch movement prior to building in those stiffeners. At the end of that time, using the same thing, which certainly isn't Sears Point or Laguna or anything like that, the result was pinpoint only. No movement beyond the diameter of the pinpoint.
A hell of a reduction in, movement from stock to a slightly modified there.
300–400%, I would say, in actual measurement.
Note the fire extinguisher too. Is that a halon type?
Halon.
Yes, of course. You want halon rather than chemical because that.
I don't like corroded motors.
Indeed, exactly. There's a story in a new newsletter about the effect of fire extinguisher chemical on the life of one's engine. I.e., it kills it immediately.
Did you hear that there was a fire this morning down at the Hilton?
No, I didn't. What happened?
It was a hydraulic lock. And you know Carl Bunkland, buddy of mine with the blue roadster down here? I'm sure you've met him a couple times. He had that happen, and Alan Klingon had to replace a connecting rod that was folded up.
Yes, I have it. That's examples for the tech session this afternoon.
So, anyhow, he heard this in the morning. The guy says his battery's dead because it won't turn over, and they try and push it, and nothing's happening.
On a hill or something? Yeah, of course. They coasted down the hill with hydraulic lock in it.
He didn't, though. He went out and he said, "Stop, don't do that." And they opened up one cylinder. I don't know which one it was, and that was the
number
one.
Two or number 4, probably.
It poured all the gas out. Then instead of anything else, he left the spark plug out, started it, and torched off all the gas. I said, "Girl, who had an extinguisher?" He said, "Everybody." But the owner had a powder extinguisher, unfortunately.
Oh, and it sprayed all entirely with powder.
Apparently not the engine too much.
Oh, boy. Did you modify the heating system at all to have any type of blower-induced heating or anything like that?
No, I considered that. I couldn't
electric
find...
heat or whatever?
The thing about the heating system, I think, is that it's limited by the engine output of heat. So I felt that a blower was unnecessary, and then I further reduced it by putting the oil cooler out in the fender, so I lost some of that heat into it. I considered a gas heater. I can't tell you why. It isn't in there.
Okay. Well, I understand it's California after all.
Yeah, it's felt like
it's New York or Canada or someplace, it'd be a different ballgame.
On top of that, how much gas heater is it going to take to keep heat inside this thing?
Oh, about 50,000 BTUs an hour, I figure. 20 kilowatts or so, you know. Oh, did this engine burn, or was there serious damage to the engine from that fire?
No.
Lucky.
He spilled, about a quart of gas out of one cylinder, and torched that off, rolled the car forward to get it out of there. There was very little in here, enough that they blew it out while they were talking about it.
That, fans, a warning to you that if you do have the gasoline hammer effect, and you take out a plug to crank the engine over to have gas removed, please disconnect the spark coil wire so you don't get any sparks in the engine. Blow out the gas, and then after all the gas evaporated, then fire the engine back up again. Not while there's gas all over the place.
That can't be very original, can it?
That's the reason this car is up here and not down this.
I didn't want to get in on your filming over there, but that just caught my eye. That's pretty cute.
You like the pipe plate there, too?
Yeah, well, it's like my Model A. I'm going to go home and put one of those on my Model A. You know, these...
How long did it take you to machine that pipe plate?
Let's see. I actually took a count on that. I think it was 18 hours of lathe time.
18 hours of lathe time to make that up from a solid chunk of aluminum?
A billet.
Billet of aluminum. Okay. It's a billet of aluminum.
7-ounce part, 12-ounce billet, 12-pound billet.
12-pound billet, 7-ounce part. And that's the drain line for when you fill gas up and it drips a little bit. It doesn't drip on your nicely painted gas tank anymore. It drains down to the vent line and goes off in the Never Never Land.
Yeah.
The one hell of a car you have, boy. It's the culmination of a decade of one man's effort of what a speedster should really be like, right? I'm surprised you didn't make better modifications to the bumper besides the Nerf bar.
You know, I considered about 50 things on this. Finally, I decided for no other reason than I like them. And that it seemed to tie in with a statement of a period of time to have the Nerf bars. There's no modern speedsters. You have to pick a certain time and design it out.
That's for sure.
So I ended up picking a time which would have been, say late 60s, early 70s. Nerf bars were common.
Can I bring you a dust rag?
Bring me a dust rag? How about a hose?
This fan's one hell of a speedster. The factory ever knew about how he modified it. They probably have him on the design board of Porsche. Oh, I'm getting this one. Believe me, I'm getting this one. Well, I really appreciate your time here describing all the goodies you've done to this thing. It's really been a hell of a lot of fun.
One of these days, I ought to get down there. You ought to get up the city to clean up our stands and you can see what the bottom's
The underneath, indeed, with the 911 suspension components and the 5-speed and the whole bit. How many hours do you think you have in this car?
I once did a check on that too. To be honest, I can't remember. I probably would rather forget. 11 years, 10 hours a week average, whatever that turns into.
About 5,000 hours. 500 hours a year. 10, 11 years, 5,000, 6,000 hours. That's why the project. Bet you're happy to see it on the road.
I'm happy to see me in it.
On the road. Yes, indeed. I don't blame you. It's one hell of a car. We're going to have to give this prime consideration here in the video as to just what you can do to modify these things. You want to spend the time and effort to go and do it right, boy.
Make sure you get color so that everybody can gripe about the fact that I painted the dashboard red.
Yes, please note that, fans. Here we have a violation of the first law of Porsche, that the dash is a different color from the outside, but he doesn't give a shit, neither do I, frankly.
How about asymmetric dashboards?
Unlike police cars. The way he's got the two little boobs down below the cutout there for the Speedster dash on the left and on the right. Would you explain the gauges? Describe the gauges that you have there.
They're all VDO.
They're all VDO.
Let's see.
Let's take it from the right-hand side to the left-hand side.
Okay, right-hand side, fuel gauge, back, top, center, oil pressure light, dead center, oil temperature, lower, speedometer, amperage gauge.
And ammeter over there. Ammeter over there. There it is. All VDO, and they all work. And you modify the dash a bit to fit everything in.
It's the only place you could put them that are visible inside the steering wheel. The option was to hang them on aluminum pieces underneath, but of course with a level of finish on the car, that was acceptable.
That's a hell of a job there. You got the gauges you need and want. You have all the proper instrumentation, oil pressure, oil temperature. The only thing you don't have is the cylinder head temperature, right?
I ran climbing up on Skyline yesterday, long uphills, pulling mostly third, fourth gear, just a little bit of fifth gear work.
Fifth on the 5-speed, remember, fans.
Yeah. I was seeing between 210 and 230. That sound about right?
A little warm, but it's under grade load on a hot day. Not too bad.
It would drop down as I found it downhill and started coasting. Then you're going to see the 210 again.
Yeah. In fact, when you coasted downhill, it should go down to 180 or below. You're coming down here coasting.
No, to be honest, I didn't see. After I was worried about the warmth, I didn't bother to watch it. So I don't know what got down to when I was really doing something.
That's about right. Mine almost got up to 210 coming up the hill, but cooled down to, gee, cool. You know, but I came up here about 9 o'clock, so it was a lot cooler. Well, I really appreciate that. I'm sure our viewers, however many there may be of this particular tape, would appreciate that too. This certainly is by far the best modified Speedster in the entire entourage here today, no question about it.
Yeah, but there's only one other modified Speedster.
If you're going to modify it, though, you may as well modify it. Now, this is a 1965 industrial engine. Do you know where it came from exactly? It came from a maneuver of the German Luftwaffe in association with us, or what?
No, they were training them at Luke Air Force Base. They were training German officers down there. And then they closed out that program. There is no F-104 stuff left there anymore.
These were actually used to fire up the, keep the engines on standby, the planes on standby, and fire them up when needed.
No, what they were for, it was to air condition the aircraft, and it had a 28-volt DC generator, I believe, or it was a 400 cycle, to keep the instruments warmed up. So all they had to do if they wanted to go is jump in, start it up.
So basically it kept the instruments all warm.
Yeah.
The engine was running during this time, though, right?
No.
Wasn't?
No. This engine, yeah, not the airplane.
Okay, right. But I meant the industrial engine was running to keep the plane system, basically, life support system working.
That's what they were supposed to. But I think what they did, I think they just went ahead and used the ones that had the Ford engines in them. Because the time.
Oh, okay. So they didn't use these much.
I doubt it. Like I say, this one's a high time engine. It's got 19 hours on it.
19 hours on it. That's pretty good. Let's see the engine number on this here. Oh, autofocus doesn't work well at all. There's lots of stuff around. also doesn't work well when you get too close. I see. Zero 11781 looks like, or 0117782. Alright, now this is the actual engine, generator, and hot air generation system, huh? That they use to keep the instruments all warm on the F-104s. Was that here and in Germany, or they just brought them over for maneuvers, or what?
No, they were training them down at Luke Air Force Base. They were training the pilots there.
Okay.
I don't believe they used these much. I think they were using the ones with the Fords in it.
So these are used like for standby or something.
Could be.
Purpose in life was to provide power for the keep the systems in the plane ready, so the plane can be ready all the time, essentially, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, now the oil line, the throttle controller, or the governor there, is controlled by the pulley, which senses RPM, of course, and then from our connecting rod to the carburetor, operates the carburetor when the power is needed, whatever, to maintain steady output. It has an oil line that goes to the oil pressure sender, normally screwed in there, plus two other wires that probably cut off the ignition when it senses low oil pressure. I bet that's what does it, huh? Those two wires there.
I think so. Either these or on the other side.
That's the sender for the gauge.
Probably this one here then.
Right, and that one there is the one that probably cuts it off when it drops too low. Very cleverly done. And the oil is taken via that line to lubricate the governor, and then from the bottom of the governor goes back into where the normal drain plug is, and the plate is used for doing normal maintenance, as well as there's a T in the line for draining the oil underneath.
Yeah, the plug, well, you can see it. It goes out, see that line comes there? It goes out and down the bottom. And there's a plug in that.
Where are we? There we are. Okay. Oh, there. Very good. Okay, I see. I think I see. Yeah, there it is. Okay. That was actually very good. Diagram. Schematic. Electric schematic. What are you going to do with the rest of this? Just junk it out?
Well, like I say, a guy wants to build some trailers out of it, part of it, and I don't know about the rest of it. You know, the deal I made with him was the engines only.
I see.
So, you know, if you wind up with the engines and you want some of this stuff, or, you know, if there's something you need, like the power takeoff, so I imagine we can arrange something.
Power takeoff would be nice, because then I could at least drive something that could be driven easily.
Yeah.
This is kind of too big and bulky really to use for anything I want to use it for. But it's nice to have it protected. I have to put it in the shed. I can put it in the shed, and I can run, run the belts to a pump and drive a pump that way to filter the pond, and that'll make life a lot easier. A little bit of overkill to have a Porsche engine as a pump filter, but I think that I have to have something like that around the house occasionally.
Yeah.
Like to have the, I don't know what you're going to do about the instruments, but you need to have the instruments in a panel along with it. Is the guy going to take the instruments too, or the?
No, that wasn't part of the deal. Just the engines.
Okay, but I mean the other guy you have wants a trailer part of it.
Oh no.
Could we do something on the
I
instruments
imagine
too?
we can work something out.
Okay. All right. Are you guys in partnership, or are these yours and you sell them?
Oh, him? No, they belong to us.
Oh, okay.
He ran the ad. I have really not tried to do too much with these. There was one guy up in Washington that was interested in them. I haven't heard from him for a while. He was supposed to come look at them, and he didn't. We haven't tried to push him at all.
Well, he's got an ad in one of the magazines.
Yeah, just right.
Magazine.
What Hal does. He told me he was going to do that.
They're an interesting engine, you know, that they have. For a car, it requires so much conversion that's really only beneficial to a guy that's got a really destroyed engine on his hands.
Yeah.
The lower end's okay if you replace the cam followers, the cam, the cylinders, and the pistons, and it doesn't have much of a flywheel to speak of. You know, the flywheel's weird on this thing. They have to replace all the sheet metal, almost all the tin. The heater boxes, flapper boxes are okay, but they're early style. So really they have the heads, the case, the block, crank, and the rods. It's still okay. They can be used in the car.
Well, the crank, I think Perry checked on the crank's over $500 for the crank.
Yeah, the cranks can go as high as $500 for a crank. Rods aren't too expensive. Heads are getting hard to find in good shape. These probably have the late model heads on them too. From that mine did from the '64. These are the same vintage, so I'm sure this would do. Okay, that's neat though. I know that they were used for military base applications. Building the engines that were in military base down in Arizona. Around Phoenix, I guess. They low bidded the contract to get the job because they were in like these industrials. They had all the good cranks and heads and rods. They rebuilt it completely by replacing all the parts because he had expected to make money on the old parts that were still really good. So on the way out, they got it all done. Driving out the base exit, the guy said, "What you got in the car?" He said, "Well, all the old parts from the engines." "Well, you can't take those. That's government property." And they took them back and they destroyed each one by cutting the cranks in half, cutting the heads in half, and that sort of thing. I don't know if the story is true or not.
Oh,
But
they do it. They do it. I mean, they do some funny things.
it certainly fit in the sense that this is the first time I've really seen confirmation of the industrials used for the Luftwaffe or whatever. And it's neat. They had them all integrated into using American components for some of the parts, and the engine for the main prime mover and the whole bit. Really nice. You got to save one for a museum. I'm serious.
This one here didn't have the compressors in it.
Now, Jesus, is that just a flywheel? I guess it is.
Fan.
Oh, it's a fan. Okay, there's a cooling fan in the back. Is that controlled by a clutch or is that working all the time? That's probably working
I
all
don't
the time.
remember. I think they were working all the time.
To get air into the box here. Of course, it was kind of open here at the front, which is why it's open at the front. Okay, all right. The fan has 1, 2, 3, 4 fan belts at least. One to drive the generator over. Come on, generator over here. One to drive the fan, which cools the entire plane and probably the box too. One to drive the fan for the air conditioner, looks like.
Yeah,
That's
the compressors are gone out of this one.
Okay, the condenser is back there. That fan there drives a condenser fan for air conditioning. Well, you need air conditioning. And then, of course, over here, all the controls for the gauge, wires for the gauges, controls, etc. All mil-spec stuff. Who makes most of these things? Oh, General Electric. Well, I used to work for GE.
Yeah.
The General Electric gauge there. We have, oh, that's a German one there. That's a German radio telephone.
I got somebody here. Go ahead.
Okay. Got a German part there. Now where's the Russian part? We have relays there. White Rogers, American temperature control part. Must be removed during operation. What else we got here? Oh, there's a ducting over there for the hot air from the engine to go to heat up the plane as necessary. We may probably from a Volkswagen. So this is about a probably a 15-gallon tank or so. Normally these things probably only produced about 10 horsepower or something. Be about 5 pounds an hour, so they could run 10-15 hours on the tank. Looks like it had a slight leak there.
Now that's from the oil when I had to pull the drain loose to get the thing out. The oil.
Oh, okay. They look pretty clean. They look like they weren't leaking much.
No, I had taking that out. That's what happened.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate this. Let me get a shot of the engine that's out. It did fall through though, huh?
He never said one way or the other, so
This is kind of clever. See, they put, in place of the clutch, pressure plate, and disc, they put this metal arrangement with a rubber hub, kind of like a clutch disc, only it's not. It bolts directly to the flywheel. And they run the transmission main shaft, or at least the one end of the transmission main shaft, to the power takeoff. Basically nothing more than a bunch of belt drives on the back. But it's kind of neat. It's a neat, you got ball bearing support in the housing, which is what you need because you don't have any support really. This needle bearing up here inside the flywheel. That doesn't provide much support at all. But that's the rear half. What drives everything is driven off of the pulley at the end.
I took that off yesterday. I mounted that other drill.
That's very clever. Let me get a shot of the side view. All right. 1, 2, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pulleys at least. 4 bolts on the back. These are local surplus, and they came out of.
They did have a portion number.
Yeah, industrial engine number.
Oh, again.
Let's see the case casting numbers. The case casting numbers are on the case, and they correspond to about the right vintage
Of
1965. Yeah. It's the 80,000. Yeah, 64. They made in 64. I had an industrial. The one I found in Biloxi was made in 64. It had no similar things to this. I think they were probably part of the same deal. They're a restaurant. It seems almost a shame to break them up in the sense that they were designed for this one purpose. When they go to a car, is a major modification in it. You know, it's really not designed to go in a car. You got to pretty much throw away all the stuff above the short block to make it work.
So, yeah, they're primarily for people who have a very broken or tired engine who want to replace the basic block itself.
They are neat though. It's too bad you can't. You know, there isn't a market for them in their original for the original purpose.
Yeah, not many people are willing to put in that kind of money for something like Wisconsin V4 or something like that. But,
well, aren't they very expensive? I mean, for this type of operation, you know, for operating planes or starting planes up or something.
Which are really suited for.
And that seems like a very expensive operation. That seemed like these might sell for $10,000 or something, and that, you know, $3,000 or $4,000 at least, all complete.
Very low market out there for it.
That's too bad. That would be wonderful.
Well, we can probably get you into 4 of them. One sold.
Yeah, I'd like to buy them at surplus prices, though, not at kind of retail prices.
Yeah, I don't know if you would or not. I'm not making all that much on it. I pay a lot of money to get them. Yeah, I was planning on using them for what they were designed for, and being as they were F-104, you don't buy them for scrap price.
F-104s are still used, aren't they?
Yep.
Oh, I see. That's why. Maybe we can sell them back to the Germans.
Germany's getting out of the F-104.
About time. They kept crashing.
Well, they weren't using it for what they were designed for. They had it. You know, when you start adding 6 or 7 tons onto an already heavy airplane, they don't fly too good. Yeah.
They actually added that much? What was that?
Oh,
armaments?
they added so much crap on those airplanes. It's nothing but their own fault.
Oh, this is ironic. They have 2 tie-down screws there on the side horizontal tin. Most car ones only have 1 tie down for the fuel pump on the early models. Actually, on the late models, really, where they had the different fuel pump. I wonder if they were used for anything or not. These 2 tie downs here. Nothing looked like it screwed into them. They take a vacuum line off of here. What the hell do they do with that? They bring it over to the what? Oh, that's just a balance tube. Okay, it's a balance tube to go from side to side, like they did on the early 57 engines. That's what that baby is. I have a magneto from a brand new magneto from an industrial engine, plus the governor. Well, this part of the governor here. They had another governor of a different design that wasn't oil fed that sat up here and just operated the throttle directly. In fact, this belt wasn't over here, it was up here driving it. Kind of changed it, replaced the generator stand with a different one and had all that governing ability in there. I guess they changed this to be more heavy duty with the oil lubricating it. They had no oil line, the other one. Oh, and this is Yeah, this is the outlet from it. Was this the way it was, or you attached that
I ran
line?
it on the other side, but I didn't want to run it underneath all this stuff here.
Okay, you attached that line, didn't you? Okay. So.
I was actually what I was going to do. I was just going to plug that back there and eliminate the governor completely, but I didn't have any metric plugs to plug this off here or underneath.
Actually, they are generally American.
They're not.
They're not? Really?
This is 1/8" pipe thread. That's metric.
Okay,
So
all right. Yeah, these where this plugs into is American.
That's
1/8"
American,
pipe thread.
right.
That's right. But the other ones are, yeah, the other ones probably are metric. They're brass fittings. Yeah.
Because I figured, boy, I would mess with that governor. I was just going to eliminate it. I wouldn't have to screw around with all these oil lines. But I don't know. I think Perry might have some plugs over there in that trailer.
It should fire right up.
I don't see any reason it shouldn't. I do want to put some oil in it first.
Yeah, that'd be a good
That
idea.
might be a good idea.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Does it turn freely when you?
Yeah. I had the crank.
Boy, a lot of storage here.
Oh yeah, I'm sure of it.
A lot of storage. Jeez. Let's get a shot at crank. That's the crank. Crank comes with all of them, or?
Cranks. I know there's a couple other ones out there. I think they all have cranks.
You can see it started with a crank.
Because I've done with cranks before, and I
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
broke my thumb.
I know. Damn darn.
if the battery got shot up though, and you had to fire the engine, you'd probably start cracking. Okay. Not even for hobbyists or guys that are trying to, restore an old plane or something. So this is 50s and 60s.
50s, 80s. Got some F-15.
Really?
Not much. Some.
I thought they were mainly all.
Here's some of the instruments.
Guns on your mailing list?
Not hardly. That's all F-15 instruments.
That's F-15. Okay. They've done a lot to.
They're changing some of them. Some of them
Digital
are not.
stuff.
I think maybe that FA-18. I think is the first one. They. Some nuclear had them.
Speedo here, nuts. Mock. So number one.
Goes around.
Go for the Mach number somehow.
Yeah, right. For running instruments and the electronics.
Oh, so it's small. So
Yeah,
it's
well, for just keep on the ground.
They had industrial engines in. Is that true?
It's
Morgan called me.
It's mentioned. The industrial is treated in the book. All the ones I had seen. If I was lucky, I could count the whole ends. But no until governor until Ripley sent oil that's one of feet, except for picture maintenance procedures on the factories for parts kept for industrial engines. All accessories.
I think I got that in there.
Well, really? Have manuals that came with these too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Probably.
Them off when they were looking at them on the bid. I think.
Oh, really?
There should have been one with each one of them.
Yeah, the manual a half-inch for the service manual. The same vintage as the one I had. This is actually made in January 1st, 1964. And my date stamp was just about that time too, so it's not a bad one. It's one of the latest ones. They made one in 1969-70.
The internal parts are identical to the automobile engine, isn't it?
Well, the lowest power version of the automobile engine, yes. Yeah. In this case would be C and the normal.
Right.
It's got cast iron cam followers. It's got a C crank. You'll have the C912 rods. The cam will be a C or a. It's got a big on case too. 6/18 industrial engine has a basically stock 6.5 cubic inches, 1582 cc's. It only produces 4604 of these 1680 cc engine. Continuous output's 42 horsepower, 3.9 gallons at 42 horsepower, gallons per hour, I'm sure. Yeah. That's neat. Yeah, between us, we probably have all the manuals of, at least late model stuff. If you ever do need some of the apps, your Tasmania, or something, it needs a industrial engine manual. This isn't bad, but it's a lot thicker than this. It covers the operations, including a complete overhaul. And pretty good carburetor. This probably had the choke, yeah. See, it's a Zenith with a Zenith.
Volkswagen carburetor.
No, this Porsche used them on the. But for industrial, you need a choke. So. It just gives tune-up and normal maintenance. It doesn't give any overhaul procedures. And then you might have all the overhaul procedures for everything. So that make him mania. Yeah, he's actually going to buy it, huh?
Yeah. Well,
He runs
a letter last Friday said that he definitely just confirms his intention to buy the engine.
For an airport or for just for an automobile? Oh, okay, I thought I'd be using it for
Why just the engine itself? Just their engine out there.
Oh, okay.
I haven't talked to him about the letter I wrote to him last Monday, this Monday.
Okay. I thought you might want to have it for a generator. Today, fans, we're going to take a trip inside where all Porsche 4-cam engines come to die, inside the Rensport Airport in San Jose. Here, besides the other engines and all the aircraft parts we have here, is the owner of the shop, Jim Wellington. Inside, we have the graveyard of all the Porsche parts, rack after rack, shelf after shelf, wall. The wailing wall here with about the entire 4-cam Porsche engines mixed in with regular Porsche engines. But a lot of Porsche 4-cam Porsche engines, probably more in one place, other place. There's about 54 together. There's a good shot of it there. 4-cam engines made from about 55 to 1965. Longer made. 4 cams to drive the cams themselves or bevel gear drive. That's a regular case off of a that's the 4 cam there. We get some bevel after the cameraman. The lights unfortunately influence it a bit as the engine. That's an early 57.5 regular engine, not a 4 cam. It's a 2-piece case, about 1950. 4-cam engine there. Engine also, number 9426. This entire wall here, an earthquake could result in the demise of 4-cam engines for the foreseeable future. Anyhow, as you can see, I'll take through here. I'm going to show you more of 4-cam engines. Note how different to look from a regular type engine case of a large oil pump pressure and the scavenge. Incidentally, for the is the late model 356 engines do. The scavenge pump is about scavenge oil from the bottom of the sump, take it back to the oil tank. A little bit of what is on the shells. There we go. Now you get a good view, good entourage on the wall. These, like I said, the largest number of engines together in one place in the entire world. Even the factory no longer has to speak of, and no one else that I know of has anything close to the number of fork cams that are hanging here off of the wall. There are the shrouds below that for the 4-cam engines. They take a special shroud with an air intake on both sides, not just one. Those are the bearing race containers for the Herth roller bearing cranks down below, and some Herth roller bearing crank pieces there. And when we swing back the other way, you'll be able to see the cranks themselves. There they are, Herth roller bearing crankshafts, each one worth about $2,000 or so when rebuilt and working properly. They were pressed together, well, they weren't pressed together, they were tied together with special bolts on the Herth cranks. SPGs are pressed together. There again is the wall. That's probably one of the most expensive walls in Silicon Valley. As you can see, it goes around and around and around. And there are about 20 rows of 4 each, or 80 total engines, of which there are perhaps 60 4-cam engines there. There is probably a 10-year supply of 4-cam engines, since it takes several hundred hours to put one together, including something like 30 or 40 hours merely to adjust the valve timing. You want to set the valve, the bevel gear drives up in such a way as they have zero backlash, because any backlash or slop in the bevel gear drives will lead to timings in the timing variations in the cam timing, which is something one does not want to have happen. There you can see almost a shot of a bevel gear drive inside that particular one. Again, more close-up shots of the 4-cam engines. There's a 547/1. These were made again from about 1955 in 1500 models up to 1965 with the Carrera 2-liter. Carrera 2-liter used a plain bearing crank, while the previous earlier ones used a roller bearing crank, some of the Herth cranks we just saw previously. This again is probably the most exotic wailing wall in the Silicon Valley. It is unique unto itself. There is nothing else like it in the world, and we wanted to show you this to give you some indication of what is available in the wonderful Silicon Valley of California, and how in some cases these things don't exist anywhere else except Silicon Valley of California. I hope you enjoyed this tape. We apologize somewhat less than professional cameraman picture taking of the last hour of it, but we felt that the shots of the industrial engine from the 104 and the Speedster Plus, and even this wall here, would more than make up for the fact that the camera jiggles a little bit, inducing a mild case of nausea occasionally. And we hope that you've enjoyed this tape. If you have, like either the famous Porsche books, the ABCs of Porsche Engines, or Secrets of the Inner Circle, Murphy is My Co-Pilot is the third one, problem-solving text. We also have available 2 brand new books. The Maestro Chronicles contains all the new stuff from 1983, 1984, all new stuff, all new problems, all new solutions to the problems, as well as the Maestro Spec book, which contains all the specs from all the other books, plus many specs that are no longer in any book. These can all be obtained from HCP Research, 20655 Sunrise Drive, Cupertino, California, 95014. Any comments on the tape or the books would be indeed appreciated, as long as they're not too obscene. We try to advance the cause here of the old Porsches, since they aren't making them anymore, and before the knowledge goes away into one big pile of dust, we would like to record it for posterity. So any future ideas or suggestions you might have about either the tape or the books would be indeed appreciated. Until that time, or until you want to comment about it, keep the faith.
Not the studs either, just the outside of the case. Okay.
Okay, you can help the Maestro if you'd like to. He does need your help. The database needs your help, and the database can help you too. So everybody helps each other here. What he would like to get from your engine, if you ever get the chance to take it apart, or even if you don't take